Here we go. So guys, I'm going to do like a talking headpiece today. That's the move. I want to talk about endgame cards because they are controversial at this point. There's no other word for it. They are controversial. They're not divisive. They are universally disliked, I think. And I think the whole concept really at this point has to be considered a failure from 2K. But I'm not here to rip on 2K and be overly dramatic. I'm actually going to provide you 5 reasons why this concept has failed. But we're going to look at it in a slightly different angle to what we've heard so far. Because a lot of it has just been kind of complaining. And I think a part of it is that people don't really know why they're complaining. They know they don't like it, but they're not sure why. There are arguments to some of this stuff, guys. And stuff that almost saves the endgame concept as we go through this. But I'm going to cover 5 things. And at the end, I'm going to talk about why none of this matters. Because it really doesn't matter if you like it or dislike it at this point. And I understand the reasons why people don't like it. But I'm going to get to it at the end. The 5th thing I talk about, guys, is something I don't think anyone has spoken about so far, certainly in this capacity. And I'm going to try and round out these arguments, provide balance, provide a real conversation about this, rather than just sitting here going, I hate this, it's not great. Let's jump into it. Let's get into the first one. So the first issue, guys, and this is, again, a universal opinion, which is the SIGs and animations are repetitive. They are. There's absolutely no argument to the fact that in endgame cards, the SIGs and animations are repetitive. Now, I have a completely different view on this. So the argument is, like, why are we getting endgame cards? Can we just get invincible cards like we did last year? Guys, we're getting those cards. So this is the psychology of the 2K fan base. This isn't 2K's fault that this particular argument is being raised. 2K players need to have the best version of every card. Psychologically, we're just built to want the best version of every card. So we're sitting here going, we don't like endgame cards because they're repetitive and they're boring. When the invincible cards are being released with unique SIGs and animations, but we're dismissing that while saying that the endgame cards are boring, while requesting that we have invincible cards with better SIGs and animations that exist. Do you see what I mean? Doesn't really make any sense. This is all about how you approach this, right? You can look at it and go, right, there's endgame cards, but if I want to compromise, I'll get an invincible. I want to save some MT or whatever. When really, that's what you're asking for. So flip the mentality over and say, right, we're getting the invincible cards we want. We are getting T-Mac with Trey Burke. We are getting those exact animations that we want. And if you want to spend an extra million MT, go and get the endgame version. Now, guys, without question, the endgame cards are boring. They are the same card. But we're asking for something that already exists. They're releasing 5 other versions of these cards. Some of them are out of position. Like the Kareem, the shooting guard Kareem that I did a video on a couple of days ago. Like, I would take that over the endgame card, guys. Like, it really isn't that. I think the endgame concept, like I said, no question about it. It's repetitive, it's boring. But there's 5 other cards, guys. And they're the cards that we're asking for with unique SIGs and animations. They're in the game. They're releasing them every Tuesday and every Friday. Now, the next thing, guys, is kind of, again, it's hard to argue because one of the criticisms is we're only getting 2 players. We're basically getting 4 players a week. 2 on Tuesday, 2 on Friday. Now, guys, I'm not going to argue this. This is boring. I mean, we need more cards. And this time of year, we used to get like some crazy like budget releases. We'd get like fan favorites and things like that. Like the nostalgia is not there. That's what I really look forward to at this point in the year, where we look back on the year, the overpowered cards that we had throughout the year, get updates and get, dark matters or invincibles at the end of the year. And obviously, it's just not happening because we're getting literally 4 cards, 4 players a week. I completely understand this. Now, I will caveat this by saying they're adding 4 or 5 cards into the game modes every week. So we are getting additional cards, and some of them have been really good. Like Ralph Sampson is one of the best power forwards in the game. So we are getting additional cards, but they're not falling in the headline drops. And you could argue, and this is the only argument really, that if they released, let's say those 5 cards, and Lamar Odom, like I said, Ralph Sampson, if they took these cards, if they took Invincible Jar, Invincible D Rose, if they put them in packs, it would solve the argument, right, that we're not getting additional players. So we would be getting additional players. They just wouldn't be free. So you could argue, and the one real argument to this is we are getting additional players. They're just not putting them in packs and they're making them free. There's an argument there, guys. I'm just putting it out there. Now, the third thing, guys, and part of this is just, it's the time of year for this, I guess, at the end of the day. But one of the reasons the game feels so stale right now is huge chunks of it have become irrelevant. Things like Hoff badges, shoes, coaches, all of the stuff that we do to kind of personalize a card has gone out the window. No one's taking an endgame card and doing anything with it. You buy the card and you run it. That's it. Everything else, you look at the amount of things that are kind of redundant in the game right now, right? Like I said, HOF badges, shoes, coaches, the exchange. There's so many different things. The token market even now with HOF badges becomes irrelevant because they've got 80 HOFs. The endgame cards have kind of eliminated a huge chunk of the game. And there is no argument to that other than it's the end of the year. And this is what happens. I mean, it's not massively different to every other year, but it's certainly not exciting. You know, it's certainly not interesting. It's certainly not unique. It is repetitive and boring in that regard as well. And yeah, it's just very much plug and play, grab the card, chuck it into my lineup, and I'm good to go. Which, you know, isn't the most exciting thing in the world. Doesn't matter which way you look at it. Now, the fourth thing, guys, and this for me is one of the biggest things, like, skill gap is becoming more and more irrelevant, which ultimately makes the game less fun to play. And I think that's, for me, the issue. When you've got 5 cards that are, you know, limited in one way or another, you have to kind of utilize skill, you know, to get open, to get good looks, to play good defense. It's very heavily reliant on skill. We are at a point now, guys, where people are just sitting in the corner with 5, you know, to 10 endgame cards in their lineup, knowing that those cards will play defense for them, you know? I've played people that have switched, like, endgame Taco on to be a primary, like, ball defender, and then they just sit in the corner with their point guard. Like, this is the boring thing. Like, this is the worst thing for me, like, at this point. We don't want to get to a situation where skill gap becomes almost irrelevant. In modes like Clutch Time and TTO, they're so short as games. It just takes a couple of freak animations and a game could go one way or the other. So I think skill gap right now, if you're running an endgame lineup, if you're running a full endgame lineup, I would say skill gap is the lowest it's ever been since I've played 2K. Like, you know, I'm still running, I think I run Weber and T-Back. They're kind of the 2 endgames that I would run. I don't run them every game. I'm still heavily reliant on Invincible Jordan. I've got Mystic Luka. I've got that shooting guard Kareem. I've got Glitch Taco instead of the endgame one. So I'm still using varied cards, varied SIGs and things like that. And that, you know, the cards aren't perfect. They're not complete. You know, using Glitch Taco instead of endgame Taco is a huge, huge difference. But, you know, you guys have seen it. That endgame Taco will just hit from anywhere without having to move. And that's a real issue with these endgame cards. They're over the top, you know, CPU defense that they provide. And all of them you can catch and shoot from pretty much anywhere without moving, creating space, anything, and it will go in. So skill gap goes out the window. But again, guys, maybe at this point in the year, that is, you know, I guess fairly common. But it's never been as bad as it is right now. Like, skill gap is redundant in the game. It's not a thing. It's really down to how well those cards are going to play for you. And those endgame cards are overpowered in every conceivable way. And the last thing, guys, and this is the most important thing for me. This is a conversation that's happened, but hasn't been rounded out, okay? People are saying there's no content to grind for. This just isn't true. It's not true, guys. We have an endgame card in Domination. We have an endgame card in Clutch Time. We have an endgame card as a level 40. We have weekly cards being chucked into TTO, the Vault, and Clutch Time. So we're getting cards every week. There is cards to grind for. If that's what you need to play this game, if you need a carrot, if you need something to play for, it's there. Here's the problem, guys. None of it's worth it. That's the problem. There is nothing you're going to do to grind for a card right now. Outside of, I would say, Weber. Outside of Weber, there's no card you're going to grind for that would necessarily improve your lineup. That's the problem. Like, I've got Jokic and Harden. Neither of them make my team right now. So, and they're not losing out to other endgames. They're losing out to Invincible and Mystic cards, you know? It's just the animations and SIGs on those cards are better. So, we are at a point now where, you know, Grant Hill's not worth it in Unlimited. He's not going to make my team. You know, TTO, I've got Pete, and he's not going to make my team. And this is another weird argument for this season, because they're saying they're not updating the TTO card. Guys, they're updating the TTO card every week. They're chucking like 4 new cards in there. Why are we complaining that they're not adding in the one card that they usually would, like, mid-season cycle? It's very strange. I've heard this several times. Very weird, guys. They're literally adding 4 or 5 cards every week to these modes. Like, it's way more than they've done in any other season. But yeah, that's besides the point. Pete Maravich, like, not worth grinding for at this point. You know, Jerry West in the draft, not worth grinding for at this point. Limited, we're getting an Invincible, so we know it's probably not worth grinding for because all the Invincibles that we'd actually use are probably already out. Elgin Baylor not getting used. So it's not that we haven't got things to grind for. They're putting things to grind for regularly. Okay, it's not the most creative content in the world, but it is content. And, you know, we do have a few days every week where we can play 3 different game modes, get brand new cards, make MT, whatever. The problem is, guys, we've had Samson and maybe Odom as the 2 cards that have been worth it. I know people are high on this Tyler Hero. Sure, D Rose was actually kind of popular as well. So there are a few cards that are worth it in the kind of weekly event. But in terms of the standardized game modes, there isn't many cards that are worth it, guys. And that's the real problem. That's the challenge that 2K have, is that it's not worth grinding. It's hard to improve your team when you've got an endgame meta with any of these cards. Right. That's everything, guys. Now I want to tell you why it doesn't matter. It just doesn't, guys. We are 6 weeks away from the next game. The next season will drop, and they'll do what they did last year with Season 9. They'll put in some, like, you know, OP cards in every game mode. Level 40 will probably be an endgame again. I'm assuming Unlimited will probably be an endgame, but every mode will have an endgame, right? Like, they did this last year. They're going to do the same. I think they put Invincible Kobe in certain things, and, you know, they'll do it again. So, everyone will get that opportunity to kind of build a better squad in a couple of weeks. But it just doesn't matter, guys. We're so close to 2K23, and one of the biggest mistakes I made, I burnt out this time last year, because I played the game non-stop and went straight into 2K22 without a real break, without kind of cooling off a little bit. And it felt really intense. I ended up burning out, not making content for 9 months. So I'm enjoying the break, guys. Enjoy the break too. Play the game for fun if you can. Like I said, it's not the most fun game to play at the moment with the meta the way it is. But play the game for fun right now. You've got nothing to grind for, so just play for fun. Play when you want to. This is a good thing. You're going to get a break. I suggest everyone takes a break. At least, you know, cool down a little bit before we get to 2K23. So you hit it with ultimate enthusiasm. That's my advice. Right, guys, that's the video. Until next time, thanks for watching.